Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gentlemen. You know, somebody recently called me out on not having night in that intro, but it's already pretty long-winded as it is, and my usual intro already covers a time of day, so... Hello everyone, it's daytime! I'm Professor Buster, and welcome to Puzzle Academy. Today, we'll be discussing the topic of basic chaining techniques. Before we begin today's lesson, I'd like to introduce you all to another learning resource, panel.guide. Inspired by a similar resource from the Puyo Puyo community, panel.guide is a central hub for learning and improving at panel games. The site is separated into 3 different skill levels, and while it's still pretty new, we've managed to gather a small collection of existing tutorials and reference material to help you get started. Of course, that includes a link to Puzzle Academy's YouTube playlist as well. There will be a link in this video's description, so go check it out sometime. Alright, with that out of the way, let's begin today's lesson. Now, make no mistake, just because I call these basic techniques, that doesn't mean that these are only for beginners. Instead, consider these concepts the building blocks upon which you will build your skills. First, let me explain what exactly a chain is. We know that when a match clears, any panels above will fall down. If those falling panels then create another match immediately upon landing, they will create a chain. And if the panels above this new match then fall into yet another match, that will extend the chain. And so on and so forth, as long as the player can keep it up. Chaining is very free-form, and there are many ways in which a player can do them. To help give you an illustration, I'll use Panel Attack's debug feature to display what's going on behind the scenes. This places an overlay on the panels with some information about them, which also reveals just how bored and disinterested they are. You can see when making a match that the panels above the match enter a chaining state just before plummeting down. This applies not only to the layer of panels directly above the match, but to every single panel extending upwards above it. And if any of these panels that are marked as chainable fall into another match, that is what determines if it counts as a chain. This is why, for example, making 2 unrelated matches, one after the other, does not count as a chain. For the sake of clarity, I will be separating chains into 2 different categories. Let's start with the most basic type of chain. There are many ways in which one can set up chains. A few examples include the ones on screen now. You can think of basic chain setups as being either vertical or horizontal, and these can be mixed and matched. In this example, we start by first setting up the red panels above to fall into a horizontal clear. Then, we clear the horizontal green panels like this, so that the red panels will fall down and chain. We can think of this as a horizontal into horizontal chain. Next is an example of vertical chaining. We set up the greens in the same column so that they will make a vertical clear, and then set off the vertical red clear to allow the greens to fall and create a chain. This could be thought of as a vertical into vertical chain. As mentioned before, these techniques can be mixed together. Here, we have an example of a vertical to horizontal chain. We start by setting up the green panels for the horizontal clear, and then set off the vertical red clear for a chain. And of course, the same is also true in reverse. In this case, we set up a vertical clear with the green panels, and then use the horizontal red panels to trigger our chain. Using just these 2 configurations, it's possible to create entire cascades off of a single clear. Watch this chain setup unfold. There's a bit of fancy stuff going on near the end, but notice how each link in the chain is either in a horizontal or vertical configuration. It's important to remember that Panel de Pan is a game with an active chaining mechanic, meaning you can still move the cursor and swap panels around during clears. So don't feel like you necessarily need to set up your entire chain in advance. If you're quick enough, you could choose to simply move panels into place as you go. Next, let's take a look at the more involved type of chain, active chains. Official English language games have used many different names for these, including skill chain, active chain, and hot chain.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
But the community has pretty unanimously landed on active chain, as it seems to make the most intuitive sense. It is a chain which requires an action after all, one which requires players to be actively involved, thus active chain. Of course, if you say skill chain or the like, we'll probably all know what you're talking about. I'll be going more in-depth with different types of active chaining techniques later in this series, to the point where many of them will be getting their own dedicated videos. But to give you a taste of things to come, here are a few examples. This is called an insert. It's one of the easier active chains and can be useful in a wide variety of situations. This one is called a slide. By swapping the bottom panel at the right time, it can support two panels simultaneously, creating a small window during which they are both considered on the ground by the game, and thus can chain. Those are some simpler examples, but there are tons of different ways you can utilize and even combine active chaining techniques. For example, this is an insert into catch, which is then immediately combined with another technique called stealth to create a chain that doesn't seem like it should be possible, yet somehow it is. Most of these inputs are nearly frame perfect. This sequence doesn't have an official name. I just like to call it a ganache chain, after the player in the PvP community who is well known for pulling off stunts like this. That's only the tip of the iceberg regarding what's possible in this game. And trust me, we'll be covering all of that and more in due time. For now though, we'll be continuing with the basics in the next episode with some basic combos. Until then, here's your homework for today's lesson. In 2-player versus mode, perform a ganache chain. Sorry, I mean, for this lesson's homework, I've prepared a small set of practice puzzles for you. These can be added into panel attack for play. There will be a link in the description to download these puzzles. If you're on a Windows computer, the path to place the files will be C, users, your active users, app data, roaming, panel attack, and then puzzles. If you're on another platform, sorry, advanced tech support is outside the scope of this series. You could always ask in the help channel of the Tetris Attack Online Discord though. Start by clearing this puzzle set. If you can't figure out the installation or you don't have access to panel attack, you can simply move on to the second part of the homework, which is as follows. In endless mode, perform one horizontal chain and one vertical chain. Play on the easy difficulty at speed level 1. Good work today, class. Remember, nobody starts out being able to make large chains. Just keep practicing and you'll find yourself improving bit by bit every day. But until next time, class is dismissed.